Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you're doing and
Yes.
what you're up to?
So I'm Anastasia. I was previously a CEO of a company called Lifestyler, and my company was acquired in September 2017. So yes, that was after 2 years of actually from founding the business. And then, yeah, I'll go into it a bit more in a second, but that's basically what I did and where I am.
Brilliant. And you took money from, am I right in thinking, from Albright, or Albright got involved in your business?
Yeah.
How did that come about? Because it's interesting for when a lot of the questions I get asked from founders is, oh yeah, I understand investment, I understand what I need to do on a pitch deck. Where are the investors? Where do I go to pitch and find them? So how did you get involved in Albright?
So the Albright asked me to be on a panel for young female entrepreneurs, and obviously I was like, definitely. It sounds like a great opportunity. I was actually raising at the time. So on the panel I explained that I was raising, and after they liked my energy, so they said, would you like to come to a barbecue with us afterwards and have a chat? I got there, and within 2 to 3 minutes, their head of academy, Sophie, came up to me. She's like, you're going to need to pitch in 2 seconds, so prepare yourself. And I was like, okay, great, that's fine, cool. And then Debbie Wasco, who had recently just sold her company for 50 mil, and then you have Anna Jones there, who was the CEO of Hearst magazine, stood in front of me, and you're starting to feel physically sick. And they're like, so what do you do? And I was like, and that pitch, without knowing exactly what my business did, it's, as you were mentioning before, the model, but also the brand, and encompassing that into 60 seconds for me, I wouldn't be where I am today. So it really does show the importance of pitching. So when you find investors, or you need to find them, they're everywhere. And if you've got a good pitch and you've got a good story, there's always an opportunity there.
Excellent. And what happened next in your case? Did the money just come into your bank account and you cracked on?
No, so I had to go to London countless times. It was mostly centred around the model, like you mentioned. That was the most important. Where's our next exit? Where's the next round? And they already had a business. So my original business was called Palette. It was a booking site for makeup artists. It was a marketplace, and it was doing relatively well by itself. And then they had their own company, which was a concierge service for interior stylists, personal chefs, etc. So they wanted to mix the luxury with the millennial. So then they actually acquired the company last year, which was brilliant and not something I was expecting. But then, yeah, since then we've been working together. So, yeah, that's what happened.
And your role is, so your company you're working on now is Lifestyler,
Yes.
right? But you've also got a role within...
The Albright, yeah.
Yeah, within Albright.
Yes, so I am there because I'm very good with social media. I not only run Lifestyler, I also do services for them, consulting. So I work with the Albright. So the Albright is a female-led, female-founding group. So any ladies in here, unfortunately there's not too many, which is a real shame, but hopefully next time this kind of event occurs, there will be. But it's a female-led company which has a fund, an academy, and then also a private members club in London. So it's a really interesting space to be in at the moment, and being a female founder myself and them actually investing in me, it was so important. And we've actually got a pitch day coming up. Fantastic. On the 21st of the 2nd.
Everyone write that down.
21st of February. So if anyone's interested in seeing female founders pitch, please make sure that you even come along and just watch and see what's going on, because it's going to be a really great event. And then obviously all the lovely ladies in here, if you'd like to have a chat with me after about pitching in front of them and what they're kind of looking for, please feel free to just come up to me and ask.
Fantastic.
It's at Federation House.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Anastasia. So I hope you've made a note of that to tell your female founder colleagues and so on. That sounds like a really good thing. And I'm now going to go back to Tech North and check that we don't have a pitching date that's going to clash with the 21st, but hopefully not. But we're just running over time, so it's just for me to say thank you for listening. And if you can't raise, it's honestly not my fault. Oh, yes.
So it's kind of a question that I had before we started, so I don't know how relevant it is just because of the stories that you've told about how you found your investors, but I wondered if there was how much certainty you had around what you were planning to do with the money that was invested and how closely that played out in reality afterwards, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Well, actually, I think it would be good for Thomas and Anastasia to answer. You basically want to know if what you promised you do with the money turned out to be true.
Yeah, and were the investors keen that you had a very clear idea about what you were going to do with the money, or were they a bit more relaxed about, you need some money, we'll figure out what it's for?
Okay. I'll go first. All right. Thanks. So my co-founder is a former senior tax associate and an M&A expert at PwC. So we had a lot of business expertise in the team, especially when it comes to financial planning and modeling and stuff. And so I think our first business plan was a complete overkill in terms of like how business plans should look like. I think it was more like a Series B level business plan rather than a pre-seed round business plan. But it worked really well. So we modeled everything. How many developers we'll need. What's the staff size and so on, and burn rate, all these things. And it worked really well. So we had a specific vision. It was typically it's really hard to do technical estimates. So you never know how hard it's going to be that problem technologically, because you will do 9 out of 10 things, and then what specific thing can we end as a year of development? That can very easily happen in the technology world. And we did a lot of technical bets because we build our software with the latest and greatest technology. Effectively alpha stage software, not even a beta quality. But it worked really well. And so the milestones were, the accelerator enabled us to kick off the project, so to speak, and develop some kind of prototype. The seed round enabled us to create MVP and a full product. The seed round extension, which is now in progress, will be to for the product deployment, and then Series A funding will be for expansion.
And so you had very exact figures, and you think you more or less stuck to that?
I think so. Yeah.
Anastasia.
I think because I was a lot earlier and hadn't been through all those rounds, I think when the money came into the bank, I stuck to it to a point, but then you see your model changing, you change, your team changes, everything that you thought was going to happen doesn't necessarily happen, and then you've got to rethink it all again. So in terms of sticking directly to plan, in terms of the world that I was in, you couldn't, because you didn't know what the next trend would be, who would be booking next. It's seasonality as well, so very dependent on what you're doing. But in terms of letting them know what you're going to spend the money on, that's so important. I can't stress enough how much you have to understand where you're putting it, why you're putting it there, and what you're going to do with it after. So very important.
And actually the kind of, I don't know if Murray, you wanted to add anything to that?
The business that I sold recently, before we sold outright, we took investment from the people who ended up buying it, the company that I'm now part of. This was 2 and a bit years ago, and we dramatically overspent the money they gave us. I think they gave us $450, and we burned through that in about 8 months. The whole deal was predicated on the idea that they were going to provide a massive access to their customer base. So we had projected income from their customer base that they were going to put into their sales projections, force their salespeople to deploy our product. They didn't do their side of the bargain, so we spent the money on the overheads and development, and the income didn't arrive.
Okay.
So they weren't very happy, and then when we explained why they shouldn't be very happy, they realized they were the problem. And everybody was happy from there.
Excellent. A happy ending to that one.
Yeah.
I think it's worth pointing out, particularly at the early stage, and when you're talking about sales and income, it's when you put a sales chart and they all look like that, right? Everyone takes that with a massive pinch of salt. So don't kind of beat yourself up about how exact your sales. You have to be able to defend them if asked. But actually, a lot of the investors will look at that and go, well, yeah, okay, if everything goes perfectly, it'll look like that. But they're already discounting massively off it. But I think, coming back to your question, it's important to kind of understand that an investor doesn't, they want to see what you're going to spend the money on, but they want to see that because they want to be convinced that if you spend that money on what you said you're going to spend it on, your company is going to move up a notch and your valuation is going to go up. So they want to know, okay, if you spend the money like you said you're going to spend it, I believe that it's going to be worth more. And if you can convince them of that movement in your company, then they'll be interested because they can see the value going up and they can see their investment going up. Getting bogged down in a lot of detail about exactly where you're going to spend it, I think they will be willing to talk to you about, because they're all interested in your company growing. So actually, they're not going to hold you to, even though your business plan is part of the legals, they're not going to hold you to every single line. They're basically going to go, okay, if you change, why? And as long as they're in agreement, you can kind of move beyond that. And they're going to hopefully trust you to do that.
I was just going to add, something that will point out is that sometimes the revenue stream and the valuation are not aligned with each other, and that you could have spent a dramatic amount of money to create value that doesn't create revenue. And they'll be very happy with it, as was our case. Or you've not spent the money, you've got lots of revenue coming in, but you haven't actually created anything of value. You happen to have a conventional business, and that's not really what tech investors are looking for.
Yeah, good point. Anastasia?
I think a really big point to put in terms of your financials is your CPA, so that's your cost per acquisition, cost per sale. If that can continuously go down as you're building, that's what, from my perspective, what my investors saw in the marketplace, that's what they really wanted to know and hone in on. So it's and the EBITDA as well, very important.
And it's something you should be able to work out at a fairly early stage about how much it's going to cost, and you can kind of project on that. You should know your costs.
Yeah.
Your sales is much more kind of open to the market, but you should know what your costs are. Yeah. Any more questions?
Well, I just close the evening by thanking James. That's been really informative. I hope everybody has felt the same tonight. And also to thank the guys and Anastasia. I would definitely encourage the female founders in the room to either give it a go, that's how you learn, or go and watch and learn from people that are doing it. I'll certainly be there on the 21st.
And boys, you can learn something too.
Yeah, everybody can learn. So I'd just like to say thank you very much to everybody for taking part, for taking the time this evening. And if you haven't already signed up to the 19th of February, which is the follow-up workshop to this one, just pop online and get yourself booked on, and we'll see you back here in a few weeks. Thank you.